What's up out there, everybody? Welcome back to our ultimate countdown of the top 100 movies from the 1990s. This time we're diving into another wild mix of unforgettable classics and cult favorites from the decade that I think certainly helped to define the decade's cinematic landscape. Today we're covering spots 70 through 61 on the list, and this episode will deliver gritty crime dramas, hilariously dark comedies, and action-packed sci-fi. I think this batch of movies definitely has something for every 90s film fan, so buckle up, grab your popcorn, and get ready to revisit the era when VHS ruled, boy bands reigned, and movies were a little bit cooler and a lot more crazier. In The Bodyguard, Whitney Houston belts ballads, Kevin Costner broods around in a romantic thriller about a pop diva, her bullet-catching bodyguard, and a scarf that launched 1,000 slow-motion moments in cinema after. His mission was simple: to never let her out of his sight, to never let his guard down, and to never fall in love, and he was sadly only to get 2 out of the 3. This movie gives you Whitney Houston, Kevin Costner, and an adult romance with a 6th grade structure that touches almost every genre there is. That's really all you need to know, but let's go deeper, because The Bodyguard is not just movie magic. It's one of my all-time favorite guilty pleasure flicks that I do force my wife to watch with me every year. It's an emotional roller coaster wearing a sequin dress and sunglasses at night. It's peak 90s melodrama wrapped in glittery pop ballads and gently dipped in slow-motion body checks of emotion. Kevin Costner plays the ex-Secret Service agent turned bodyguard with the charm of a piece of driftwood, and Houston in her acting debut is a pop diva who needs protection from a stalker, an inevitable Oscar snub, and the emotional weight of singing one of the most legendary ballads ever recorded, because let's talk about that song. I Will Always Love You didn't just top charts, it obliterated them. The soundtrack became the best-selling of all time, turning every high school dance and breakup into a dramatic slow-motion montage. Critics, of course, weren't swooning back in 1992, calling it overly melodramatic and sappy, but audiences disagreed to the tune of over $400 million worldwide, and decades later, it still works, whether you're watching for the romance or the nostalgia or the absolutely bonkers moment where Kevin Costner shoots blind in the snow like a hitman whisperer. Rewatching this movie now is like uncorking a bottle of 90s vintage cheese. It's delicious, dramatic, and a little bit silly, but try not to tear up on that final song because it will sneak up on you. In the magnificently over-the-top Universal Soldier, Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren star as reanimated super soldiers with PTSD, neck bombs, and unresolved Vietnam beef, and a gloriously unhinged sci-fi action showdown that is full throttle from start to finish. Now, what if you could bring soldiers back from the dead, inject them with mind control agents, and then program them to kick people through walls? It's pretty much the premise of Universal Soldier, a movie that answers the question, what if Frankenstein was actually Belgian with a spin kick and a six-pack? Here, Van Damme is a sweet Louisiana boy turned genetically modified military cyborg who just wants to find some pants and remember how to feel things again. Opposite him is Dolph Lundgren, the world's angriest necklace enthusiast who's all ears and who clearly missed the memo about post-war therapy. Universal Soldier is just a mashup movie. It tosses together Vietnam trauma, cryogenetics, truck stop shootouts, and enough roundhouse kicks to rotate the planet. It adds ice baths, neck injections, and a lot of aggressive shouting from men wearing tight shirts and even tighter expressions. I think Emmerich directs this with the subtlety of a bazooka, and frankly, it's exactly what this movie deserved. Critics, of course, gave it a shrug, but audiences turned it into a cult hit. It launched a franchise that refused to die, including a sequel, direct-to-video sequels, a couple of soft reboots, and one oddly poetic 2012 entry that kind of felt like Tarkovsky on steroids. This was always a favorite of mine growing up. I had a copy of it on VHS and watched it religiously, and to me, Universal Soldier doesn't just embrace its own insanity. I think it went full swan dive into a vat of bio goo and came out flexing. It's absurd, aggressive, and secretly kind of brilliant if you're into existential dread delivered via grenade launcher. Plus, where else can you see Lundgren terrorize shoppers in a supermarket while wearing an ear necklace? Demolition Man is a beautifully over-the-top sci-fi action romp where Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes will throw down in a time where swearing is illegal, Taco Bell runs the world, and the seashells are mysterious, and luckily for all of us, the future isn't big enough for the both of them. Now, Demolition Man is what happens when you throw Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes, and a truckload of 80s action tropes into a blender and spin it into the 90s. This is a movie that says, what if Brave New World was filled with vanity muscles, one-liners, and heavy artillery? The peaceful, over-sanitized setting here is ripe for destruction, and who better than Stallone's grunting relic of the past to punch it into shape? Demolition Man to me is Stallone doing what he does best, bumbling heroism and flexing through destruction. Wesley Snipes, meanwhile, is having the time of his life. He is the star of this movie, gleefully chewing scenery like it's the only thing not banned in the future. These were my 1 and 2 favorite actors at the time, and them together on screen really was a cinematic Super Bowl for teenage Anthony. Sandra Bullock, I thought, was great here as well, playing that eager officer, just obsessed with 20th century culture, which leads to many hilarious misunderstandings and really one of cinema's weirdest virtual sex scenes. To me, Demolition Man is just an action amusement park, and it's a total blast. It's packed with satire and shootouts and seashells nobody knows how to use. This is a movie that delivers its action with a wink. It skewers political correctness and corporatization and our obsessions with safety, and somehow predicted things like smart homes and smartphones and contactless everything, and Arnold Schwarzenegger becoming a political figure. It's part sci-fi, part buddy comedy, and part muscle-bound mayhem, all wrapped in spandex and foam padding. So in other words, it's a glorious, absurd time capsule of 90s action cinema with just enough brain behind the brawn. In The Usual Suspects, Kevin Spacey, Gabriel Byrne, and Benicio del Toro headline a great ensemble cast and a twisty crime tale about 5 crooks, one legendary boogeyman, and a coffee cup that changed movie endings forever and proved that the truth is always the last place you look. Prior to the era of true crime podcasts, Reddit threads, and TikToks decoding film endings frame by frame, there was The Usual Suspects, a noir-inspired thriller that whispered, "Nothing is what it seems," and then pulled the rug so hard it knocked over half of the 90s. The plot? Well, it's kind of everything and kind of nothing. 5 criminals walk into a police lineup. It sounds like the setup for a joke, but instead it kicks off a twisty story told by mostly one guy, Verbal Kent, played by Kevin Spacey, and a performance that won him an Oscar and created 1,000 conspiracy theories. The story he spins is part heist, part revenge tale involving a crime lord named Kaiser Sose, who may be a myth or may be your neighbor. The film's iconic ending, where everything just snaps into place like an evil origami swan, just cemented its status as one of the greatest cinematic gotchas of all time. Audiences were floored, film students took notes, people were spent years rewatching it to just spot clues that they'd missed, and for about a decade, no twist was safe from being compared to it. I remember seeing this movie just after high school, and it was one of the first that inspired me to start writing. It was also staple viewing for me in college. This movie taught us to question everything, especially the stories that seemed too perfect. It also taught us to never trust a guy with a limp and a cup of coffee. The greatest trick The Usual Suspects ever pulled was making audiences feel smart and stupid at the same time and having them loving every second of it. Tarantino's first full feature, Reservoir Dogs, Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, and Steve Buscemi wear black suits, spill blood, and argue about tipping in an ultra-cool story about a heist gone sideways, and then some in a movie where every dog has his day. Before Quentin Tarantino had an Oscar, a foot fetish meme empire, and a license to kill Nazis, he unleashed Reservoir Dogs, a blood-splattered calling card that made indie cinema cool and turned colored criminals Mr. Pink, Mr. White, and Mr. I definitely need some therapy into legends. This is the heist movie where the heist never happens on screen. Instead, we get the chaotic aftermath of it. A warehouse full of bleeding men, yelling, accusing, and bleeding some more. Harvey Keitel brings a stoic gravitas as Mr. White, Tim Roth plays the world's sweatiest undercover cop, and Steve Buscemi somehow makes being paranoid weirdly charming as Mr. Pink, but there's no doubt it's Michael Madsen as Mr. Blonde who steals and slices the show. That ear scene traumatized a generation, and with its non-linear structure and machine gun dialogue and just a soundtrack full of sunny 70s hits laid over this pure carnage, Reservoir Dogs flipped the crime genre on its bleeding ear. It proved that you didn't need a blockbuster budget to tell a stylish, punchy story. You just needed some snappy banter, sudden violence, and an unshakable love of cinematic cool. Reservoir Dogs was not a movie that set box office records, but it did detonate across film culture like a stolen diamond exploding in a screenplay workshop. It made Tarantino a legend overnight. It would inspire a million imitators, and it turned every film student into a faux expert on non-linear storytelling and Madonna lyrics. It's not a movie that's for the squeamish, but it's one of the defining indie films of the 90s. It's brash, bloody, and endlessly quoted. Just don't ask Mr. Pink to tip, ever. In The Big Lebowski, Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, and Julianne Moore stumble through a surreal noir caper from the mind of the Coen brothers, full of rugs, bowling, and nihilists in a cult comedy that really ties the room together. The dude abides, and so does The Big Lebowski, a film that bombed at the box office before achieving the rarest kind of cinematic glory. It became a religion. No, really, there's a real-life Church of the Latter-day Dude. That's the power of White Russians, rug metaphors, and peak Coen brothers absurdism. Here, Jeff Bridges gives the slacker performance of a lifetime as the dude, a bathrobe-wearing bowler who gets mistaken for a millionaire. His rug gets peed on, and he gets pulled into a kidnapping scheme involving a purple-clad bowling Jesus and Tara Reid. The plot is much less important than the vibe, and the vibe here is pure stoned existentialism filtered through Raymond Chandler and weed smoke. I remember starting this movie just before a college party one night and never making it to the party because I was all in on this brilliant mess. Of course, critics were initially baffled by it. Audiences didn't quite know what to make of it either, but over time, The Big Lebowski became a touchstone for weird comedy, deadpan chaos, and ultimate quotability. It's basically a meme generator in movie form, and the Coen brothers craft a world so unique and so lovingly bizarre that fans have been quoting, analyzing, and cosplaying it for decades. The film doesn't solve any mysteries, but it doesn't need to. Like the dude himself, it just floats along. Frances McDormand, William H. Macy, and Steve Buscemi bring Midwestern crime and Minnesota pleasantries to a whole new level in Fargo, a snow-drenched tale of kidnapping, murder, and polite police work in a homespun murder story once again from the minds of the Coen brothers. To me, Fargo is a snow-drenched slice of Midwestern mayhem that starts with a car deal gone wrong and ends up in the wood chipper. This darkly comedic masterpiece takes us to Minnesota, where politeness masks desperation and a kidnapping scheme unravels faster than a swap meet cardigan. William H. Macy plays this Weasley car salesman so deep in financial trouble he hires two lowlifes, Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare, to kidnap his own wife for ransom. His logic here? To get the money from his rich father and pay off his debts. I mean, What could go wrong, right? It turns out everything, because enter the very pregnant and very perceptive police chief played by Frances McDormand in a career-defining Oscar-winning performance. Her you betcha charm here and razor sharp instincts are just perfect for this story. She disarms suspects with coffee and niceties before quietly and constructively dismantling their alibis. I mean, she is the unlikely hero here in a world filled with greed and stupidity and blood on the snow. I mean, Fargo is just one of those films that walks a tonal tightrope. It's equal parts gruesome and goofy, the violent shocks, but the accents soothe, the cinematography turns frozen landscapes into just beautiful canvases, and Carter Burwell's haunting score reminds you that beneath all the quirky charm is real chilling despair here. Now, culturally, Fargo has become a touchstone. It's been referenced, parodied, and even spun into a brilliant TV series. It showed that a crime doesn't pay, especially when you can't even execute a plan without screwing up the parking. In Bad Lieutenant, Harvey Keitel bears it all emotionally and literally as a corrupt cop on a drug-fueled collision course with redemption. In Abel Ferrara's raw and gritty New York set character spiral about a gambler, a thief, a junkie, and a killer, and a cop, all in one. Not to be confused with the 2009 semi-remake Protocol New Orleans, that one starring Nicolas Cage and his hallucinatory iguana. This is the original, and it hits like a moral sledgehammer wrapped in cigarette smoke. Bad Lieutenant is less crime drama and more just a descent straight into the soul's grease trap. Keitel delivers one of the most raw and fearless performances ever put to screen, in my opinion. This is a movie that never flinches and doesn't care if you do. He plays this unnamed New York cop whose moral compass isn't broken. It was never installed. He's snorting coke at crime scenes, gambling away his life, shaking down criminals, and just spiraling towards spiritual oblivion. So this is not a film for the faint of heart. It's a sweaty, grimy film that's just crawling with urban decay. It's filmed in a New York City that actively looks like it's rejecting humanity. It will pull you in. I think here Keitel just really strips himself bare to deliver a character that's all pain. This isn't a man that has hit rock bottom. This is a man that's already at rock bottom, and the rocks underneath him are starting to give out. Director Abel Ferrara does a fantastic job with this movie. He balances Catholic guilt, drug-fueled hallucinations, and the wreckage of masculine ego like a man tossing lit matches into a confession booth soaked in gasoline. This film is brutally honest, often uncomfortable, and almost hypnotic in its misery. I remember watching this movie on cable when I was in my teens, but it really grabbed me later in college. Culturally, Bad Lieutenant became a cult legend, a raw nerve of early 90s indie cinema. It's the kind of movie you respect more than you enjoy, and one that asks tough, unanswerable questions about sin, grace, and whether a man has gone too far and can ever find his way back. It's not for everybody, but if you can handle the fall, it's unforgettable. In Spike Lee's He Got Game, Denzel Washington and NBA star Ray Allen bring father and son tension to the hardwood in a sports drama about guilt, glory, and all the politics of college recruiting, in a movie that's all about the father, the son, and the holy game. Now, He Got Game isn't just a sports movie, it's a Spike Lee joint laced with soul, sweat, and Shakespearean father-son drama. Denzel Washington brings gravitas and a pristine goatee as Jake Shuttlesworth, a prison inmate granted temporary release. His mission to convince his estranged son Jesus, who's a top high school basketball prospect, to commit to the governor's alma mater. Simple favor, right? Only problem is Jake's been MIA for years and also accidentally killed Jesus' mother, so Father of the Year he is not. Yet still here, Spike Lee spins this high-stakes recruiting saga into something far richer. It's a story about freedom and forgiveness and family, and how being a top recruit in a sport can sometimes be a way out, but also a trap. I think Ray Allen in his acting debut Certainly didn't have the dramatic range of Denzel, but he holds his own, especially in the scenes that require more silent intensity than soliloquy. And yes, the name Jesus Shuttlesworth went straight into the Cultural Hall of Fame. The film's pop culture impact, I think it would be substantial. I think Public Enemy's electric score thunders beneath the drama like a heartbeat. That surreal one-on-one showdown between father and son, instantly iconic, and Lee's camera glides through Coney Island like a basketball fever dream, capturing both the promise and the peril of sports celebrity. It's a little bit messy, it's a little bit poignant, and it's occasionally heavy-handed, but that's Spike Lee's lane, and he drives it well. Christian Slater goes full rebel with a cause and pump up the volume as a shy teen by day and a pirate radio DJ by night who through his show stirs up teenage angst and FCC headaches in a movie that became a Gen X anthem. Before podcasts, YouTube rants, and TikTok monologues, there was Pump Up the Volume, a teen rebellion anthem hidden inside a pirate radio signal. Slater here stars as the painfully shy high schooler who moonlights as the fast-talking, truth-bomb-dropping radio renegade who, with just a mic, a modulator, and an impressive record collection, becomes the voice of disaffected youth in suburban Arizona. So, think Dead Poets Society meets Airheads if Mr. Keating had a mohawk and much better taste in music. Here, Slater, he's in full peak 90s angst mode. He gives a surprisingly grounded performance as both the quiet, mumbly loner and the smooth-talking alter ego Hard Harry. I think his rants are able to hit that sweet spot between melodramatic and prophetic. This movie really taps the raw nerves of adolescence with censorship and alienation and that quiet rage of being unheard. And this film's counterculture streak, complete with FCC raids and public radio takedowns, now feels delightfully quaint, considering like a walkie-talkie rebellion against a world run by boomers. And the soundtrack, it's the chef's kiss, of course. Cowboy Junkies, Pixies, Soundgarden, Concrete Blonde, and it's the mixtape that your friend's older brother would bump when showing up in his iRock Z for a Sunday dinner. And Pump Up the Volume didn't just resonate, I think it sparked a generation of bedroom broadcasters and socially conscious screamers. It's a love letter to the lonely kids who figured out how to make noise and in doing so, found out how to make a difference. So yeah, talk hard, steal the air, and never underestimate the power of a teen with a microphone and a grudge. And there you have it, guys, a roller coaster ride through 10 more memorable films that helped make the 90s such a special decade for movie fans, specifically myself, from tense thrillers that kept you guessing to quirky comedies that never felt like they went out of style. Some of these movies continue to influence filmmakers and pop culture to this day. I really do hope you guys all enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button. Thank you so much for watching as always. If any of these movies brought back some memories or maybe I introduced you to something new, let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this content and you haven't yet, subscribe so you can catch all the deep dives that I do into the great movies from the retro era. Stay tuned. We're continuing this countdown. The next episode will be closing out the top 50. It's right around the corner. So until then, keep that 90s nostalgia alive. And remember, movies never say die.
This is Jack Burton in the Pork Chop Express, and I'm talking to whoever's listening out there.
Live a war, you gotta become war.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
You trying to say Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?